I don't know if it's morning for you, but it's morning for me. Oh, I've been working nonstop at the office, so I have to cram videos into the tiny, seemingly infinitesimal amount of time between when I wake up and when I go to work. But it's worth it today. Today I have pep in my step. Today I am energetic because today I'm talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, a film that makes me feel forever young. I watched it all of the time when I was a kid, over and over again. This and Scream, over and over again. I kind of memorized this movie front and back. And I think I Know What You Did Last Summer is outrageously good. I Know What You Did Last Summer is so brilliant in my eyes that it's that it's stupid. It's fucking stupid good. It's amazing. This film is just incredible. I Know What You Did Last Summer is a 1997 slasher film directed by Jim Gillespie. Pretty well, I might add. I do admire a lot of the shot composition here. And the film stars Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Ryan Phillippe, Freddie Prinze Jr., and Hayes, Bridget Wilson, Johnny Galecki, Muse Watson. And everyone, by the way, in this film is incredible. The cast is outrageously good in their roles, and the main reason we're talking about it here is because I seem to have an obsession with the work, the screenplays, the films, the television shows of Kevin Williamson. Kevin Williamson wrote the screenplay, and it was adapted from a novel by Lois Duncan. So the original novel, uh, the analytical reading, or the traditional analytical, God, I can't talk. The traditional analytical reading of I Know What You Did Last Summer is still about responsibility, but it's about Vietnam and the effects on the youth that served in it. That's been the traditional sort of analytical reading of that book for a long time. So when Kevin Williamson takes the reins and exports these themes and archetypes and situations into the 90s, it's no longer about the Vietnam War. It's still about responsibility in a large way, but it might be about the effects of pop culture and the youth who participated in it. This is about the pop culture war and the war of authority figures, the war of parental figures. The scariest thing about I Know What You Did Last Summer isn't necessarily the fisherman or the hook or the deaths. It's the parents. Julie's mother has the most presence out of all of them because she actually has lines to deliver. Her mother, in the one scene that she does have dialogue, it's just awful to Julie. Incredibly awful. Makes her cry. She's a terribly selfish mother. And she seems to enjoy kind of pushing her daughter to tears. Sarah Michelle Gellar, she plays Helen Shivers. And Helen's father doesn't say a word, doesn't even notice anything, doesn't notice Helen coming in late at night to drink some Diet Coke in the kitchen. A really wonderfully crafted scene, actually. But he doesn't even look to acknowledge her. He doesn't notice the fact that there's danger in the house. The main masculine patriarch of the family does not recognize that a killer has entered the house because he's so wrapped up in the television, in pop culture as well. He's been, as a parental figure, and especially as a patriarch, he's been castrated by pop culture, by an archetypal design. Barry's mother, we see for an instant on the phone, very busy, wealthy woman, and all we see about Barry is that he doesn't want his mother to know anything about the hit and run they did. Doesn't want anything to know about that. But she's just incredibly uninvolved in Barry's life, and Barry is definitely someone who would probably need some maternal kind of nurturing, considering how almost grotesquely machismo Barry's character is. Ray, well, we don't see Ray's family. We hear that his father is dead and that the only thing he knows about him is that he's a fisherman and that it's almost a self fulfilled prophecy that Ray, after graduating high school, had become a fisherman himself. Ray doesn't know his family, but Ray has assumed the role of his father's ghost, so to speak. And I can extend this to other authority figures as well, not just authority figures. The policeman who Helen runs to for help doesn't believe her at all, believes it's a joke, and it's an incredibly incompetent person. Another example of the castrated patriarch of authority. Helen's sister, played by Bridget Wilson, is cruel, is vindictive. She's an authority figure because she's her manager, and it's about. I mean, from through her character, we can see that there's all sorts of alienation, and I mean alienation in almost a postmodern sense. So there's alienation from your work, which is represented by Elsa Shivers, and she just keeps ridiculing Helen Shivers by making fun of the beauty crown that seems to symbolize a past glory for Helen when she was actually relevant, or when she actually mattered to someone, to something, to a town, and she was celebrated for her beauty. And that beauty is now withering away, and she has to give the crown back because it's been a year since she won it. She has to kind of pass the torch. And Elsa thinks this is hilarious because her sister is becoming disenchanted and alienated. She tries to do so even more. She taunts her for her obsession with her hair, with her looks, because even though Helen probably doesn't think that she's the most beautiful woman in the world, but I mean, spoiler alert, she's Sarah Michelle Gellar, so she absolutely is one of the most beautiful women in the world. She makes fun of her for even trying to feel secure. That's the only thing that Helen can feel secure in is her hair and things like that. And of course, the fisherman comes and cuts that away. All of these power symbols of the children, of the, not the children, of our main characters here, all the power symbols are kind of destroyed. Barry is run over by his own car, and his car is ruined. The car was his power symbol, and the car is also the object of the murder, of the DUI, of the hit and run, of the disposal of the body. The car is the impetus for all of it. The car was Barry's power symbol, and the car turned on Barry during a scene where Barry was terrorized. When Helen was terrorized, they cut off her hair. Her hair, or her beauty, her eroticism, that was her power. That was her power, and it was castrated. It was removed from her. Julie, what was powerful for Julie was her morality, was her moral compass, was her ethical scope, and that was immediately compromised when they hit the when they hit the passerby on the street with the car, and she had to completely compromise her entire moral compass to go along with her friends and cover it up. Her power was her morality, and that was immediately attacked by Kevin Williamson's screenplay. Ray's power, Ray we don't actually get to see a whole lot of. We see him enough. But Kevin Williamson's script is designed so that you don't trust Ray at all. That you actually think that he could be the one who is sending out these letters and terrorizing his group of friends. Ray comes from a poor part of town, and he works labor. But I do believe that Ray's power is attacked as well, and I don't think it's his fishing boat. I don't think anything like that. I think his power was Julie. His power was having Julie, was having a woman who saw him as something beyond what he became or what he was going to become. And that was removed from him because of the situation as well. Because they got very drunk, they got very distracted when they were driving a car, and they hit a man, and then they decided to cover it up by dumping him into dumping him into the lake. Curious enough, that night when they're telling these urban legends to each other, they go to Dawson's Beach, which I thought was wow. Yeah, that's a Kevin Williamson ism. If I ever heard one, the creator of Dawson's Creek telling his characters, hey, we're going to Dawson's Beach. All right, so this is like the same kind of archetypes, but we kind of have a larger plane to deal with here. Because essentially we have our Joey, Dawson, Pacey, and Jenny. We have our same archetypes. They're just kind of molded in a very damaged and deformed and deliberately morbid kind of way, a doomed kind of way, if I can say that. What's interesting and curious as well is that we're told the urban legend that we've all heard about the escaped convict with a hook. We're even told how to analyze it properly by Julie and not to take it seriously by Barry. But we're also told to kind of keep that sort of sentimental wonder with these stories by Ray. And we're kind of edged on to imagine beautiful young girls like Helen being terrorized by the shot composition itself during these scenes. But I love the way that Julie tells us how to analyze the hook. She's telling us that, well, let's not pay attention to that story. That story is there simply to scare teens away from having premarital sex. The hook is literally a phallic symbol. It's ultimately symbolic of castration. She's telling us how to read the film. Absolutely how to read the film. Every authority figure seems a bit lifeless in this film, and deliberately so, and more so than your typical teen film fare, and more so than a Williamson fare, because even in Scream, Sidney's father is a character and does care about his daughter, especially in Dawson's Creek. Dawson's everyone's parents, parental figures in there are fleshed out, full of life, full of advice, full of assuming responsibility. The ultimate responsibility that you can have in your life as a child. The ultimate responsibility as a child. These parents aren't taking any sort of responsibility or even engaging in their kids' lives. And when they do, as in the case of Julie's mother, it's selfishly. Julie's mother wants Julie to feel terribly sorry for her. Julie's mother wants Julie's story to be about Julie's mother. And Julie's mother thinks that Julie's father is rolling in his grave because of how mean and how poorly her grades are doing, like petty shit like that. And Julie cries, and Julie's mother doesn't care. I mean, that's the closest we see to parental engagement in this film. And if it has to exactly be about parents. I mean, Williamson's own father was a commercial fisherman, so that's why the setting of this story is in a small fishing village. In fact, I think the authorial stamp that Williamson leaves on his projects, some people don't really appreciate that I give Kevin Williamson so much credit, but Kevin Williamson, with Kevin Williamson projects, Kevin Williamson has the most authorial stamp out of anybody. Scream has more in common with Dawson's Creek and The Faculty and I Know What You Did Last Summer than it does with any of Wes Craven's films. Okay. The Faculty has a lot more in common with I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, Dawson's Creek, than The Vampire Diaries, than any of Robert Rodriguez's films. And this isn't to take away from the fact that those films are well composed. Scream is magnificently composed, and the faculty is great too. And Jim Gillespie, I don't want to take away that there is great shot composition, and there are interesting parts here. That part I was talking about with Barry being run over by the car, the fisherman looms over him as Barry's lying on the floor, and we get a very interesting fade out. And these fade outs usually compositionally imply something took place, but we don't see it, and we're never told what it was. These fade outs normally imply some form of male rape, and if you do that to your most machismo character, to your most toxically masculine character, that definitely castrates that archetype, because he does have a little bit of a shift in character, or at least he starts to take responsibility more seriously, and he starts looking at Helen, his ex-girlfriend, again with eyes of passion and care, like they understand each other in this world that seems to have stood still for so long that they've left them behind. The shot composition is really good. It's just that Kevin Williamson, these are his archetypes. These are the things that he plays with. This is his little universe. I mean, this could have taken place in Dawson's Creek Capeside. The settings are incredibly similar. The characters are incredibly similar. The themes are absolutely morbidly similar. And the fact that he's basing this killer off of his own father brings a lot of curious questions to mind when you consider that the authority figures in this film are horrifying. And the fisherman is the most horrifying of all. And he's the punisher. He's punishing these children for not understanding responsibility, but they were never actually taught responsibility in the first place. Ever. The fisherman is punishment. The fisherman is absolute authority. The fisherman is a psychopath. And the hook is a scary fucking weapon. And the film utilizes that murder weapon in imaginative ways and in ways that are really, really good. Especially if we're reading every time we see the hook as some sort of phallic castration or some moment of phallic authority. Some symbol of that. Removing someone's power and dominating them, because that's what Barry does to Max. The first time we see the hook, Barry is out machoing Max, and he's holding it to his throat like, stop sending these messages, blah, blah, blah. By the way, Ryan Phillippe is intensely good in this movie. The best parts of the film for me is Barry's death and Helen's death that basically immediately follows that. But Barry's death, oh my gosh, it's like they start off with this lovely tracking shot up to a stage, and then the backdrop turns translucent, and he's there in a pretty loving kind of way telling Helen it'll be okay. And of course, this is the death where Helen's on stage and she can see Barry on the balcony, and that's the first time we actually see Barry as well. So it's brilliant amount of postmodern foreshadowing here. And then she is the one who sees Barry die, and she's telling everyone, but no one believes her, and it kind of speaks to the performative nature of horror films, the performative nature of teen films. And we can even stop being postmodern for a second and say that it just somberly speaks about the performative, about the ways that people digest teen troubles, adolescent troubles, is in a performative way. They see them having problems, and they're voicing and expressing themselves and expressing the problems that they're having, and we see them as being performative first and genuine second. Or at least figures of authority do in these teens' lives. And you can transfer that over to pop culture, to horror. You can make it meta, you can make it postmodern. But it's really born of that true terror that teens will never be taken seriously, even when the situation is murder. And I love the chase that follows, with Helen being chased around this small fishing village by the fishermen. I remember when I was a kid, things felt larger when you were a kid. And I was like, half the movie is Sarah Michelle Gellar running away from the fisherman. That has to be half the movie, because it was so intense for me. It was so intense. There are a lot of different steps, a lot of different beats in the chase that Helen goes through, and it's such a brilliantly designed chase. I love all the fireworks, and I love that they die at their power. They die with their power. Barry dies on the balcony ogling his trophy, ogling the girl he gets to fuck. And Helen dies looking at all the fireworks and the parade that she had her own float on as the most beautiful aspect of it. She dies walking to those fireworks, then being murdered grotesquely within this kind of just all these stacks of tires, which reminds you of the blue collar work that she is destined and doomed to do forever, even though she sees herself the queen of the town, or princess, or at least she once did, right? Authority is destroying that dream beneath the fireworks of unreality. And that's what's so incredible about Helen and Barry's death. That's what's so incredible about it. It's this movie is astonishingly good. Astonishingly good. I do think Scream is better, but I Know What You Did Last Summer is really impressive too, because there are all these massive kinds of layers, and I'm not sure if Scream works as a straightforward horror movie, because satire and postmodern flourishes, those are so important to Scream. I Know What You Did Last Summer, yeah, it could come off. It starts off with the template of trying to tell kids not to drink and drive and the dangers of premarital sex, yada yada yada. But what it ends up being, these kids are actually our heroes. They're the protagonists of the piece. The villain? The villain is the man they hit. The villain is responsibility, because it's not a true responsibility. It's not a genuine responsibility. They hit a figure of authority. And figures of authority in this universe, they're not innocent. They are guilty. Ultimately, the kids, they're being punished by the fishermen for a wrongdoing, but what they were doing wasn't ultimately wrong. So Kevin Williamson's moral tale of responsibility isn't directed at the teenagers in it, Julie, Helen, Barry, and Ray. It's directed at the authority figures that they surround themselves with their mothers, with their fathers, with the policemen, and ultimately with their killer. A killer is the ultimate authority figure of anyone's life. The killer has the most authority on your life other than the people who birthed you or the people who kill you. I Know What You Did Last Summer is fascinating, and no one gives this film enough credit, enough time of day, and they should. They should, because Kevin Williamson is an absolute genius, and this adds to his... It doesn't just add it, it hugely defines what makes Kevin Williamson so great. It massively defines his repertoire. It's one of his signature films. It's an essential film, not just within horror, but I think within postmodern pop art. And within postmodern art, let me just stop adding all of these little... let me stop moving goalposts. This is an essential film if you're interested in postmodern art. Period. If you're interested in horror, yeah, you should probably watch this one too. But if you're interested in actual postmodern art that seems to move and seems to really make statements and really seems to comment on culture, on society, it's this fucking movie. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I Know What You Did Last Summer is fucking gorgeously realized. It's fucking gorgeously written. It's gorgeously acted. And by the way, this cast is gorgeous. Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Ryan Phillippe, Freddie Prinze Jr. Holy shit, that's one of the most attractive casts I can think of, especially Sarah Michelle Gellar. Holy shit, man. Holy shit, these outfits. Yeah, she's so hot, it's kind of distracting, and that's how I like her. Okay. All right, let's stay on target. Stay on target. I Know What You Did Last Summer is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, stunningly brilliant. I'm absolutely in love with the art of Kevin Williamson, and I Know What You Did Last Summer is one of his most beautiful pieces. It's right up there with Scream and Dawson's Creek. It's genius, and it's incredible to look at, incredible to take in, and so much fun to analyze. And that's really the coolest thing about Kevin Williamson's art. And all right, that's my cue. Timer went off. I gotta get ready and go to work. I could talk about this film forever. I really can. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think I went pretty deep into this film and why I think it's so important. I think it's massively important. I think it's beautiful. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. Film lovers are sick people, and I'm gonna blame the movies. My name's Zach. You know? I still know. Soon. What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?